I didn't even get to finish my coffee before she told me to get out. Not in a fight. Not after some heated argument. Just calm, clipped, like she was asking me to take out the trash. Pack your things, Matt. You're not welcome here anymore. I stood in the kitchen, still holding the chipped mug I'd had since college, wondering if this was some new phase in our marriage. We'd been married 7 years, long enough to know that words can be thrown in frustration and taken back hours later. But her face, it was still cold. She'd already made up her mind before I'd even walked in the room. When I asked her why, she said, "You've been holding me back." That was it. No examples, no list of grievances. Just that one sentence. She wouldn't look me in the eye when she said it, either. Her gaze kept darting toward the front door, like she was already picturing me gone. I could have argued. I could have begged. But somewhere deep down, something in me shifted right there in the silence between us. I realized this wasn't sudden. This was planned. You don't throw someone out of their own home without rehearsing it in your mind 100 times. And if she'd rehearsed this, that meant she'd also rehearsed the story she'd tell about me after I left. So I didn't argue. I didn't even finish my coffee. I set the mug down, went upstairs, and packed what I could fit in 2 duffel bags. I left my suits hanging in the closet, my books lined neatly on the shelf, my favorite watch on the nightstand. Taking them felt premature, like I'd be back. But she didn't follow me upstairs, didn't stand in the doorway to see if I'd try to plead my way out. The silence was heavier than any shouting could have been. By the time I reached the door, she was already on her phone, pacing in the kitchen with that soft, conspiratorial tone she used when she didn't want me to hear. I didn't slam the door when I left. I just closed it quietly behind me. That first night, I stayed at a cheap motel near the edge of town, the kind with flickering neon and a front desk clerk who barely looked up when you walked in. I lay there in the dark, staring at the popcorn ceiling, trying to figure out what exactly had just happened. We weren't perfect, no marriage is, but I thought we were steady. We'd built this life together. I'd covered more than my share of the mortgage, paid for the renovations, even let her run her small jewelry business out of our living room for the first 2 years. The next morning, curiosity turned to resolve. I called my lawyer, the one I'd met 2 years earlier when I invested in a commercial property downtown. I didn't tell him the full story yet. I just asked a simple question. Hypothetically, if someone were removed from a property they co-owned, what could they do about it? He told me there were options. Quiet, legal, long-game options. That night, in that dim motel room, I started pulling old files from my email. Mortgage statements, tax returns, ownership records, and something caught my eye. Our house wasn't technically just our house. It was part of a small cluster of units, all under the same building title, owned by a local property group I knew well. It's funny how betrayal sharpens your attention to details you used to overlook. By the end of the week, I had coffee with a friend in real estate. 3 weeks later, I was in negotiations. 2 months later, I signed the papers. I didn't just buy our unit. I bought the whole building. At first, I didn't know what I'd do with that power. But then, as I stood in the echoing hallway outside her door, keys in hand, I heard her laughter through the wall. The same bright, cutting sound she'd used the morning she told me to leave. And I knew exactly what I was going to do. The first step wasn't raising her rent. It was patience. You can't make it look personal, even when it is. I let 3 months pass before making any changes to the building. In the meantime, I got familiar with every tenant, every lease term, every maintenance request that had been ignored by the previous owner. I became the attentive landlord everyone wished they had. Everyone except her. I didn't even speak to her directly. Communication went through official channels, emails from management, letters typed on company letterhead. If she guessed that I was management, she didn't let on. And if she knew, she probably thought she could charm her way around it. That had always been her ace card. But charm doesn't work on spreadsheets. When the property taxes for the building came due, I reviewed the numbers. Her unit was grossly underpriced compared to the others. Not by a few bucks, by a few hundred. She'd gotten in years ago when the rates were lower, and because she'd known a guy in the management company, she'd never seen an increase. That guy was gone now, and I was the guy in his place. So, one quiet Friday afternoon, I sent the notice, effective next quarter, your rent will increase by $350 per month to match current market rates. It was a completely justifiable adjustment, identical to what every other underpriced tenant was getting. Only difference was, The others had warm relationships with me by now. She had no idea I'd been in their kitchens fixing cabinet hinges or sending Christmas cards with small gift vouchers. When she got the letter, she called the office. I didn't pick up. The voicemail was half indignant, half bewildered, like she couldn't believe the universe would allow such a thing to happen to her. She ended it with, "This is just karma, I guess." Karma. That was her word for it. Mine was justice. By the second month, I'd replaced the laundry machines in the basement. All new, coin-operated, higher efficiency. Tenants loved them, except her. She called to complain that the old machines had been free for her unit. I told the receptionist to respond with, "That was an error in the old lease. It's been corrected." Her voice, when I overheard the call recording later, was sharp enough to cut glass. That's when I realized this wasn't just about money. It was about control. She wasn't used to someone quietly rearranging the walls of her world without warning. She was the one who made the moves in our marriage, who decided when things began and ended. But here she was, reacting instead of directing. The real twist came when the city announced a grant for energy-efficient retrofits. The building qualified. New windows, insulation, everything top grade. The only catch: we'd need temporary access to each unit for the installation. Every tenant but one happily scheduled a time. She missed the notice twice. Then, when she finally called back, her tone was cool and cautious. "Is it going to raise my rent again?" she asked. "Not if you pay on time," the receptionist said, just reading from the script I'd written. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered standing in our kitchen, coffee in hand, as she told me to leave my own home like I was an unwelcome guest. I remembered the way she didn't watch me go, didn't ask if I had somewhere to stay. And any flicker of pity vanished. Because now, every time she walked through her own front door, she was stepping into a building I owned. Every rent check she wrote, every single month, had my name on the back. And we were just getting started. It happened on a Wednesday morning. One of those bright, brittle days where the air feels cleaner than it should. I was standing in the hallway outside her unit, clipboard in hand, wearing the same navy jacket I'd worn when I used to shovel the driveway in winter. She opened the door and froze. For a second, I saw her eyes flick over me like she was looking at a stranger. Then recognition settled in, slow and heavy. "Matt," she said, her voice breaking on the second syllable. "Morning," I replied, calm as if we'd just run into each other at the grocery store. "Routine inspection." She glanced down at the clipboard, then back at me. You work for the building now?" "No," I said, and handed her the notice. "I own it." She didn't take the paper right away, just stood there, jaw working like she was trying to chew words she couldn't quite swallow. I could see the moment she connected the dots. The rent increase, the laundry machines, the grant work. Every little shift in her comfort that she'd blamed on bad luck or karma. "You've been running the place?" I finished for her. "For almost a year now." She took the paper, scanning it like it might tell a different story. But it was exactly what it looked like, an official notice of renewal. Same market rate rent as before, but with a new clause. Late fees doubled, no exceptions. Her eyes lifted, searching for some flicker of the man she used to know. The man who'd once spent an entire weekend repainting the living room because she'd said she wanted a warmer white. But I wasn't that man anymore. "This is revenge," she said finally, though it came out softer than she meant it to. I shook my head. "No, this is business. You called it karma once. I call it justice." For a moment, the hallway was so quiet I could hear the faint hum of the building's boiler kicking on. She didn't slam the door. She didn't scream. She just folded the notice in half, set it on the small entry table, and said, "I can't believe you'd do this." I smiled, but it wasn't unkind. "You kicked me out of a house I helped build. Now you pay to live in one I own. Believe it." And with that, I turned and walked away, my footsteps echoing down the hallway. Later, in my office, I watched the security feed as she left to run errands. She locked the door, rent notice tucked into her purse, her mouth set in a line that wasn't anger so much as disbelief. That's what people never tell you. Real justice doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it's just the slow, undeniable realization that the ground beneath you belongs to someone else. I didn't need her to apologize. I didn't need her to hate me. All I needed was this simple truth. Every month, without fail, she'd write my name on a check, drop it in the slot, and know exactly who was cashing it. No shouting. No courtroom drama. Just quiet, unshakable balance. And for the first time since that morning she told me to leave, I felt whole.